Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third installment of the Student Government Success Looks Like Me series. Throughout this series, we'll be interviewing CU Denver alumni from diverse backgrounds in order to gain a better understanding of the unique challenges and experiences that these individuals face on their paths to success. So here with me today is Jennifer Fairweather. Jennifer, please introduce yourself.
First, thank you for having me. I'm Jennifer Fairweather. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I graduated from CU Denver in 1990 with a degree in business administration, and I currently am the chief HR officer for Jefferson County in Golden, Colorado.
Cool. Well, thank you for introducing yourself and thank you so much for coming. So I want to know a little more about your identity before we get started. So growing up, what was your favorite part of living in Denver?
I would have to say I feel like I'm dating myself, but there was a place called Celebrity Sports Center that used to be on Colorado Boulevard. It had a pool, indoor pool with slides. It had bowling. It had skee ball. It had food. It just seemed like it was the place to be, and so that was my all-time favorite place in Denver growing up.
I'm pretty sure it is the place to be. I'm sad that it doesn't exist anymore.
I know it. Maybe something like that will make a comeback.
It sounds kind of like Boondocks, but Boondocks doesn't have a pool, so it's
Right.
not.
It was better. It's way better than Boondocks.
Okay, good to know. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So I wanted to know more about your most salient identities.
Sure. I think, some of the obvious ones could be that you think about ethnic background. I am Black. I'm also female, cisgender, heterosexual. I also grew up, in a middle class family with both of my parents, and I'm also Catholic. So those are probably some of my salient identities I think about.
Perfect. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. How do you think your identities have shaped your experience, whether that be academic or in your career?
Definitely they have. I think, when you think about growing up in a family with two parents and, that had, really good careers, it gave me the opportunity to go to Catholic school. All the way through 12th grade. And I think that experience helped my education tremendously because those schools are smaller. The teachers are super connected to your parents. So there's not a lot of wiggle room to like disappear and go off the grid too much. So I think that was helpful. And my parents were also very much involved in our education and wanted us to go to college. It wasn't really optional. So, having those types of influences were helpful. But even with that, what I think was a good family dynamic, really helpful, really supportive, being Black and being female still has its challenges. You still do encounter in the workplace and in school microaggressions, I would say more commonly than the overt types of things. You might be discounted. People may make assumptions about you. People may speak for you. Sometimes people don't listen to you until someone else restates it. And it's like, I feel like I just said that. And so, those are things that continue to be challenges that I think, you don't want to take them for granted, but you start to work through them and figure out the most productive ways to advocate for yourself and point those out in a way that can allow other people to grow, assuming maybe good intentions and maybe that for many people, they don't realize they're doing those things and that they're learned behavior that we can help everybody kind of recognize because we all do it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, absolutely. I think implicit bias is something that's not talked about almost ever. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, but I wanted to know more about self-advocacy and how that works for you and where you learned that skill.
Oh, yeah, that's a journey. I don't think I had that skill early on. I know I didn't have it in college years. As I mentioned before, we got started. I started out in engineering, actually in Boulder. And that was not the major for me, so that's fine. I mean, I don't like details, and I didn't realize that. It took me 2 years to realize I really don't like details, so I'm probably not going to really succeed in this type of career. But I also found that the harder part of that was not feeling included in that environment and not having anyone who felt like they were hearing what I was saying versus just judging me. Oh, well, you're a woman, that's why. Or, oh, you're Black. It's got to be hard for you to be in engineering. That's your problem. No, that's not my problem. I don't like details. Help me figure out something I might be passionate about. And I didn't advocate for myself in that. So in that environment at that age. And so what I've really learned is that there are ways to advocate for yourself without creating undue conflict, which I think can be a fear for some people, especially for women of color, especially for Black women. You don't want to be labeled an angry Black woman. So I think somewhere along the way, we're taught not, we might get mixed messages of don't advocate, don't make a scene. You don't want to be that person. So I think it's really been through different role models and mentors who I've seen have the ability to advocate and bring up issues and speak up for themselves, but in a way that they're using like their influence and their positive influence to use it as a teaching moment for everyone, versus a way that's going to shut others down. And so really it's just been watching others. I've just had the opportunity to work with some great people in education and in business and in government that are great role models that sometimes would nudge me. And I still have, a close friend who will nudge me if she's like, you need to speak up. I see what you're doing here. You're not speaking up for yourself. I'm like, you're right. Okay. So, having those connections is really helpful because we need friends who are going to be on our side, but we also need friends who are going to challenge us and coworkers and professionals who are going to, call us out when we need to do a little bit more.
That's awesome. And in the previous interview, we actually talked about just surrounding yourself with people who understand what your goals are and what your identity is and where you've come from and how important that is. How do you think having a strong community has shaped your direction in life?
Well, that's an excellent question. I definitely think it has helped shape my direction once I found that community. I don't think I always had it. I mean, I had a different community in high school. Early on in college, I felt like I had no community where I was. It was just a really different environment. When I came to CU Denver, the second half of college, I found a community that felt like I was included, and that helped me thrive in school. It was just a more diverse campus, some working, some not working, lots of different people from different schools. That allowed me to thrive, I think, in school and find something I was passionate about. And then, I think once I found my niche of where I belong, I didn't always work in public sector. I started out in finance. And I did well there. I did fine. I wasn't passionate about it, but I enjoyed it. When I shifted into public sector, and especially when I started working in human services, there I found my passion, and there I found I was surrounded by people who were also very. We had different backgrounds. It wasn't about that, but we were all aligned in that we were passionate about serving the community. And what I found there is that there was a different level of support because we were all had similar philosophies and values around helping others, being inclusive, treating everyone with respect, the need to support people in our community that may need some safety net programs and may have fallen on difficult times. And that at any moment, that could be any one of us. And, how would we want someone to help us and interact with us? So, I think when you find not just their passion as far as a career, but you find those work environments that also fill your cup, you're able to find your voice and more easily find people who support you. They don't always agree with you. Working in HR, everybody doesn't agree with what I'm saying. And we have those challenges, of course, but it's a different level of truly, though, people wanting to support you and see you succeed.
That's amazing. I am always searching for more people that I don't know, are in my corner, the people who are going to root for me. And I think that's what all students are looking for. And I know that's one of the many reasons I ended up transferring universities, was to find a community that I didn't have at my past school. But I want to backtrack a little bit and talk more about your path to higher education, and what pushed you in this direction. I know you said a lot about your parents, like it was an expectation in your house. And I grew up in a very similar household. So what else, what kind of lit the fire under you that gave you the passion to continue? Because I know family expectation isn't always enough.
Yeah, right. Your family expectation was truly there, and it was like, it's either A or B, and B I think was military or work for the post office, and I wasn't super excited about that at the time either. So, um, I think for me, and I know everyone has kind of a different journey. When I started school, I was just going along with everyone else in my class, and that's also probably a motivator too, because pretty much my entire class went to college, and I went off to college, to the same college with it's a small class, it was a small school, 20 people from my school. So there's that motivator too, of just the influence of your peers. But I would say I truly wasn't passionate about college and my schoolwork and what I was doing until I found a major that I enjoyed, and I was able to interact more closely with professors and facilitators who would speak about real life scenarios around how you're going to use this and how it can benefit you. So I think, also being in a smaller environment in CU Denver, where the classes were a little bit smaller, especially once you got to junior, senior year, that was a motivator, because a lot of the teachers and professors were also working in the business community. So for me, it was like, oh, okay, they're doing it, and they're talking about how they do it to help me do it. And that also motivated me, because I saw people that looked like me also doing it. And that was a motivation. I think other motivations were just kind of what you said as well, surrounding yourself with people who are succeeding and who motivated you. There were some people you could have in your circle of friends who were kind of going in different directions, and some who were kind of in that school life and working and figuring out their hustle and what they were going to do. And they were making things happen, and they were involved in groups and council and just different things. I think that was a motivation as well. And maybe I was just fortunate to lean with them instead of other groups that had other interests that may have taken them in a different direction. But I think all of those people you see as role models, even in the community, are some of the things that can motivate you to just keep pushing through and get it done.
I think one of the major motivators for me, like you said, is like being involved and being surrounded by people who were involved. In what ways did you engage with your community, whether that be CU Denver or just the Denver community at large?
Yeah, I would say, when I was in undergrad, I did start working, which was good. I mean, I think that just kept me busy to work and go to school. But I had become involved in a couple groups, and I don't remember the specific names. One was in the business school. And then I also became involved with some friends who were at Metro State. It was Metro State College at the time, doing some things with the basketball team. So it just kind of kept me connected with the campus and students on the campus. And I think that just, for me, fostered that inclusive of being part of a group that's, working on their career, working on their education, trying to be involved in the community, building connection and networking, and meeting people. And I do remember, I think I had one professor that got me connected with a group that was in advertising, which I didn't end up going that route, but it still got me that connection of, oh, okay, these are business people out here doing it, in marketing, this is something I could consider. I'm hearing what they're talking about. And so those were all, just great experiences to bolster that, that desire to do well.
You spoke a lot about connection, and I know at CU Denver, being a commuter campus, students often feel like they're not as connected to their university, and it's like parking lot to class and back to the parking lot. What advice do you have for students who kind of feel like they don't have any connection to their university?
It's interesting. I felt more connected to CU Denver than I did CU Boulder. Because when I was in Boulder, I was in Denver every weekend. I would say, it's kind of interesting you say that, because I feel like, and there's so much more on that campus than when I went there, so it's 100 times better. But I was on campus quite a bit. I was downtown a lot. I kind of for me, I made it a point to be there, to attend things. I knew people who were in the music program at other schools, and I would go to their program. So I was just, I used the library a lot. We were on Larimer Square a lot. I think we just tried to, the core group of people I knew who were all in school down there, we did a lot together. And we were downtown and around that campus a lot. So I think it can be, I think that connection can be what you make it. Because like I said, I was living on a campus and I didn't feel included at a different campus, but at CU Denver, I wasn't living on campus. There wasn't even that option. But I felt more connected because I had a group of people that we were regularly together. I even worked with someone who was a student. We worked at the same department store. So I really felt, I felt like I was never gone. Do you know what I mean? I was always, it was always there. So, for me, I didn't feel that issue. So I would say, getting involved is important, and everybody needs to figure out what that is for them. Whether it's, a student government or a different student group, or, work, being in the rec center, or doing volunteering, or doing something helping out, whether it's, student employment. I think the more you can get involved with things centered around the campus, the more included that you will feel.
Very cool. That's awesome advice. I appreciate you giving that to the students who are listening. I want to talk about your successes and challenges, because Success Looks Like Me is as much about identity as it is about success. So what challenges have you faced since graduation, and how did you work to overcome them?
Oh, so many challenges. I would say, one big challenge was, as I kind of mentioned, when I first graduated, I started out in finance. And I was working in finance for the finance industry for a few years. And I was moving up and doing different roles and doing fine. But there was that point where you just kind of hit a wall, and it's not that you don't like something, but you don't feel excited about it. Like, clearly there were people that were really excited about finance. They subscribed to the Wall Street Journal. They were excited about reading about things. And I was like, okay, not that exciting. But so I realized I had to make a career change. And that was that. I know it's a challenge because you don't want to take a step back, but sometimes in your career, I think what I learned from that experience is sometimes you have to take a step back to take a step forward. So, I had to take a step back out of a leadership role and kind of start over in HR. Was one challenge for me to overcome it and face and do. I realized I probably needed to go back to school, which was a challenge, but also, an opportunity, in going to graduate school and really trying to catch up to what other people knew in HR. So I thought graduate school would be a good way to do that without feeling like I was taking a step back. And then I think not feeling completely fulfilled in the private sector, in the finance industry. I needed to kind of leave that industry, and I wasn't sure where that was. Unfortunately, I landed in government, which is something I thought I never wanted to do. Both my parents, my dad was, retired Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force. My mom worked for Air Force. And they were always saying there's always a job in government, get a good government job. So of course I went the opposite direction and ran away from government. I will never, ever, ever, ever work for government. So that, is always a challenge when you're doing something that your parents thought you might want to do. And it's kind of that I told you so.
Yeah, I hate that.
I hate that, right?
Yeah.
So then, but then that's all worked out really well because I realized public sector or nonprofit is exactly where I belong, because it aligns with my values and allows me to, to feel included and part of a team that's giving back to the community. those are kind of those major challenges. Of course, I got married in there and had, we had a son. And so, of course, when you're going to graduate school and you're working and you have kids, life becomes crazy and you have to figure out how to balance career choices with wanting to be a good parent, and be there for your kids and do the same things that you wanted from your parents, and hopefully experience. So that's a huge challenge. And then every day, there are challenges at work. Like every day's not perfect. It's not bows and rainbows and balloons, and there are going to be challenges at work. There are going to be interpersonal challenges with different people that feel at the time very difficult. So it's important to keep that perspective around those challenges and not let them, always feel personal, and move past them. And if things don't feel right, if you start to work in an environment that doesn't feel like it's giving you what you need, you always have to be willing to take the risk of finding something that's better. Because it's a two-way thing. You're giving to an organization, but at the same time, the organization needs to, give something back to you. And I'm not talking about salary and things like that. That's important, but it's that, do you feel included? Is your voice heard? There's only so much advocacy you can do for yourself. If an environment really doesn't foster the type of culture you want to work in and where you thrive, sometimes you do have to leave that culture. And those are always hard decisions, but they're important ones. They feel scary, but things I think usually work out when you do that.
Well, I'm glad that you have the wherewithal to, I don't know, even think about that, because I think we all think of success as this like line and this linear path that you have to take. And so the idea of taking a step back is terrifying, or seeing that maybe the environment that you're in isn't cultivating a good experience for you. Like that's something that's incredibly scary. So how do you recognize that success isn't linear? Like how do you tell yourself that taking a step back is taking a step forward?
Yeah, I think when I was in school and even after graduation, I pretty much felt like success was moving up a career ladder. That was my definition of success. And I think what you realize at some point for most people is really success is about, are you happy where you are? Are you passionate about what you're doing? So that what you're doing doesn't always feel like work. There are going to be days that feel like work, but does every day feel like work? And to me, if you're able to work where you feel included, where you're in a culture that you are thriving, you're doing something you enjoy, you're passionate about, and you feel like you're making a difference in whatever it is you're doing, to me, that's success. It's not about the title. It's not about the paycheck. It's not about a parking spot or an office, because most people don't even want offices anymore. They want to work from home.
Yeah.
So it's all these other things that define success. So I think success for me really is, am I happy? Am I growing? Am I learning? Am I able to give back? And there's no, for me as well, there's no pinnacle of, when you've gotten the gold medal towards success, because I think we're always learning. I think every day I'm learning something new. I still go to classes. I still go to school. You're never done learning. You're kind of never just fully cooked. So I think that's a part of success too, is how much, when you think back, I know a lot of people looked at 2020 as that year, as a different year, but I think it gave us all an opportunity to figure out how are we going to use that year to maybe enrich ourselves and learn something new and read more books and those kinds of things. And I think, opening yourself to those experiences, which has nothing to do with a career trajectory, is really success. When you're able to learn more and do different things, different careers.
Well, I love your definition of success because it's so versatile and it's so individual. But what has been a major success for you? In speaking of definitions of success.
I would say, the role that I'm in is something that I really thought I wanted to do, and I'm glad I'm in it because I am happy and I do like what I'm doing. I feel like I make a difference. I enjoy the organization. It's been changing and growing, and I feel like I've helped influence that culture. Um, so I feel like that's been a success. I feel like completing graduate school was a success. I've taken just, different courses and classes over the year and taught different classes. And for me, those are successes when you put yourself out there and do something different. I think that's success. I think though, I've been able to engage with more community groups in the Denver area. And I think some of the things we've done, whether it's working with the homeless shelters or working with youth, teaching some classes to get entrepreneurs up and going. Those things feel like success. I think, and an accomplishment. I think when you when I think about it kind of a little bit on the micro level, like person to person. So for me, success as far as something I've achieved is when a person tells me I made a difference in their life. So I've had different employees I've worked with. You really helped me. You made a difference. When I worked with you, thank you. I've had students say, they still connect, and it makes you feel like, wow, I really did make a difference. They'll tell you, you were so helpful with this. Thank you for sending this information my way. When you're volunteering in the community and someone just appreciates that you had a conversation with them instead of just handing them a meal, you actually, talk to them like they were a person, and people, express that appreciation. So, for me, a lot of those small encounters are really some of the things I would look back on as accomplishments, even though there are other things. I think those are the ones that really matter at the end of the day.
I love that. I love that connection is where you find your success. Um, but unfortunately, we have run out of time. So thank you so much for being here with us today and just telling us about your experience and what success looks and means to you. I would really appreciate that. So thank you again for your time.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course.